I'm your host, Scott. We have JC right next to me, another great host that, we put out some great stuff and we get straight to the point. So welcome everybody and welcome wherever you're watching us or if you're listening to us. It is always good to know that we're getting a lot of traction out there, especially when we're number 12th over in New Zealand and Australia. That is awesome that we get all this traction all over the place. We get a lot of people from Germany. We get a lot of people from over there. It is good to be, a great business, help out there for lawn care and everything in the green industry. So we got a great topic today. Josh is kind of be late, so, it'd be nice to get his little input on it. But if you guys are watching us live, I see we got some people live on Instagram. Mike
Nice.
Arch from Old Relic. What's up, buddy? So welcome to the Landscaping to the Point. We got a great topic here. It is discounts. Okay. JC, you love a discount, don't you?
I think everybody loves a discount. And I think we've come to a point in society where everybody expects a discount, Obviously, it's kind of always been that way, but especially now because the way that everything in life is now expensive, people want the best deal, but they want the cheapest deal, but they expect the best quality, which is another factor, right?
Right. I mean, I think that's one of the things. I mean, I've had many times that, I've been asked discounts. I used to give discounts, and I think there's a plus to it, and I think that there's a negative to it for your business. But it's always one of those things. You want the discount, you want to give the discount too, and like you said, the quality. You want the quality though. So it's like, how do you give the quality and give that discount sometimes? And I think a lot of people, are like, oh, well, I'll just take the discount because, Joe Blow is going to give me the discount and his price is, might be higher. But I've seen a lot of people where they've offered the discount, and said, I'll give it to you 10%. But then when you go to get the price, your price is even higher than what some other guy was, So are you getting that 10% discount on that? Or are you really, not getting the discount? So
I think too, brand new business owners feel the need to, like, when they get out there and start work and start kind of promoting their business, that they have to offer, like, hey, first cut is free, or like, you subscribe with us for the first year, business contract, you get this amount off or whatever. And starting off as a new business owner, that could be very difficult for you because it takes a while to build your business. You know what I mean? So it's like, if you're giving out discounts when you can't really afford that, you manage it wrong and you do it wrong, that may come around to bite you in the butt. And, you might have you might be struggling when it comes to maintaining your business.
Right. I mean, I did, when I first started, and I think, yeah, it's a good start for when you're first starting your business. I really do. But at some point you got to step away from it. And you got to say, yeah, I don't give away discounts, and it's hard. I really do think it's hard for that, because some people will take that and give that discount. One in particular is like cash. I get asked a lot of times from customers. We'll be doing some landscaping projects and they'll be like, well, if I pay you cash, will I get a discount? And then it's like, no, I still have to charge you the same, because I can't cut back on my employees. I can't cut back on the materials. I can't give you a shittier quality than, somebody else just because you're giving me cash, so I feel like sometimes you got to say no when it comes to discounts. It's hard. And it's one of those things, like, do you really, when do you stop? That's the main thing. When do you stop giving discounts when you first start? JC, if you were to start all over again and gave discounts, at what point would you say I'm done giving discounts?
So that's a broad question to answer. It might be different for other people, but in my situation, I don't think I would ever offer a discount, and I'll explain why. Um, One, because you build that expectation. So like when you offer a discount and that discount has an expiration, or like, you you get a new customer and you offer them a new customer discount. And then when it comes time to charging them your regular rates, they may get offended, or they may not stick with you as a customer. Sometimes I feel, my own opinion is that it could make it look like shady business practices from a customer's perspective. Like if you're offering discounts, why can't you just offer a solid price and do that the whole time?
Right. Right.
Especially now, like when the landscape community after COVID 2020, you know, some people stuck with their original prices,
Right.
and they went under. A lot of businesses went under, but a lot of businesses thrived, and some people had to explain to their customers why their rates went up. Gas prices went up, things went up. And if you're kind of playing around back and forth with your prices, and then now you're offering a discount, and then you're going back to it, now you're raising your prices, now you're going back and forth, like there's too much play going back and forth with what your business standard is. And I think customers over time may see that. So, I mean, I think the more consistent you are with your pricing, the better off you'll be. If you have to raise your prices, then obviously you do what you need to do, justifiably so. Um, but I mean, if you really want to go the path of offering a discount, I mean, I would say just make sure you choose wisely exactly what you want to do, and don't give the wrong impression to a customer that's going to put that customer in a mindset that they always should be expecting a discount from you. Because once you can't, then that can change a relationship, business relationship. I don't know. That's just my own opinion. I'm not too educated on that type of business practice, but I mean, for me, I look at it from both ways, from a customer standpoint and from a business standpoint.
I agree with you. I really agree with you on all that. I think that it's one of those things that, a lot of people, once you give a discount, will tell other people about you. And then, you could be at that point where you're not giving discounts anymore. And you're getting calls from people that, were friends of, the customer that you have. And they're like, oh, well, you gave so-and-so the discount. So what, I don't give discounts no more. So then it now hurts you, like you said, as a business owner, and your reputation of like, oh, he always gives discounts, so, you should always be the person that's giving the good quality, and, making sure that everything's down to the point, and actually knowing exactly your numbers. And if you guys know your numbers, you should be able to look, go to a yard and have it figured out, even if you're doing by square footage, if you're doing it by looks, about time, whatever way you're doing it, knowing exactly how you're going to give that price. And I know, like, sometimes it's hard, especially when you have a customer that's right next door. We have multiple jobs. I'll be truthful. We actually just stopped on one street today. And we have 5 customers in a row, and each one's a different price. They're not always the same. So when you actually go to that place, it's not like, well, this one's 35, this one's 45, or they're not all 35. They're all different prices, and it's all about the square footage for me, how much there is to weed whip. Is it wide open? Does it have gates? Does it have, irrigation? That's all a big factor to me, and that's how I price things. So, but when I first started, yeah, I did give the discounts for something like that, and I feel like it bit me in the butt at that time of the year, because sometimes, you get that yard that's nicely irrigated and fertilized, and it's growing more than the other one that you first got, that's less price. And so now you're eating more time trying to do 2 jobs and trying to make it work out. So I think that's always a problem when you give that discount. So you always got to figure it out, know exactly if you're going to do gift, discounts. I think the best one is if you're going to do a discount, do like a coupon. I think a lot of people always go for a coupon, and then make sure you got an expiration date on it when you do that. So what about, would you look for coupons on stuff and want to go for someone that has a coupon for a discount?
Oh man. I mean, I guess it depends on
Hmm?
what that discount, what that coupon is. I mean, like I think your point when it comes to like offering maybe a one-time deal or expiration date on a coupon for some type of selective service, I think like that's okay. Um, as a customer, I'm always going to look for a deal. I'm always, but at the same time, a customer also wants, at least a customer always wants, or I would think that a customer would want consistency as well too.
Right.
And I think it comes down to figuring out what discounts are good discounts and what good discounts are bad discounts. Like, do you want to offer a new customer discount? Do you want to offer a senior discount? Do you want to offer, uh, you know, one, first year or free lawns, free cut, first mowing and stuff like that? Like,
Right.
do you really, you got to figure out which discounts are beneficial for you and the customer. But I mean, I guess to answer your question, yeah, I do look for discounts, and I mean, more so like when I'm shopping online or something like that, a discount code or Amazon, Cyber Monday deals or flash deals and stuff like that. But I mean, it's kind of different when it comes to the service industry,
Yeah.
because it's not like, I don't know, it's a little different habit. Like if you're selling products, you might have overhead, you might have overstock, you might have certain things where you may need to get rid of certain items. But like the service business is a service business, unless like you're doing masonry work or hardscape stuff, and you got to deal at wholesale purchasing certain stuff, and you're trying to sell things that you don't want to carry in your yard anymore, in your lot anymore. Then maybe that's something that you could do. Like, hey, I got discontinued tile, I got discontinued stone, I got this, and you're trying to get rid of it. That you could maybe say, hey, this month we're doing a special on quarter-inch white rock or whatever, for
Right.
most folks, that could be an option. But I mean, if it's something that you're offering all the time and you're picking and choosing, what, this month I want to do fertilizer discounts, like I wouldn't recommend that.
I think I'll tell you this. I used to work for a company way back when. And I think one of their biggest ploy every year is to give that first application for a very low rate, lower than what they offer to anybody when they actually sign you up. And I'll tell you what, when I worked for them, you're always, as being a technician, you're that person giving that bill to them, and your all your paperwork, and it was always something like, here's your bill. And I tell you, at least half those people that got that discount for that first year sign up, get your first application, low rate of $24.99, let's say, it always hurt them when they seen their first actual bill and saying, wow, my yard's $64. Why would I pay you $64? And at that point, you're like, well, I'm sorry to, hear that you're, upset about this, but you're going to have to call my office. I'll tell you what, them secretaries would get so many calls throughout that second application, and they would have to deflect it and say, this is what we normally play, and that actually forced the company to give more discounts to people to try to keep them, instead of trying to say, okay, well, we're sorry to do this. And they still do that. And it can hurt you in the long run, especially if you're given a deal like that and trying to, recuperate the price of everything. And it's hard, because like you said, you have, as a service industry, we have money into our fertilizer, into our irrigation parts, into stone. So it's kind of hard unless you have a discounted stone to say, okay, well, I can give you a break on this discounted stone. We still have to buy plants. There's a lot of stuff involved in anything that we do for a customer. So it's it's hard to give that discount anymore. And I feel like you said, it's just one of those things that you can't do it. I don't know how you can do it, and it's very hard anymore to do it.
It's unnecessary. Unnecessary stress, and like the way that you described it, like we could both agree, we could all agree, everybody that's listening, that there's a client customer, there's a client business relationship, right? And if you were to kind of put it in an analogy, which I love to use, you know, it's like having a girlfriend dump you and you're trying to do your best to convince her to get back with you, instead of
Right.
just doing the right things that you need to do in order to not get dumped and stay in the long term with that relationship. Another thing that gets businesses in a jam is the false representation of a discount, right? So like
Right.
businesses that overly inflate their prices and then try to like use the guise of a discount to make it appealing. Like, you know, they'll over they'll you know, let's say for just shits and giggles for numbers, you know, our mowings are $80 a yard, you know, but you know, with this coupon, you know, it's only comes down to 50%, you know, $40 a yard, you know, and they constantly do those offers, those coupons to try to lure psychologically the client that they're getting a deal.
Right.
And I don't like that because it just looks like shady business practices, you know. Like you're dishonest. Just be upfront. You know, I worked for a furniture company that would do that often. Now, what they would do is they would have a President's Day sale, but the normal price was the sale price. What they would do is they'd switch the tag and write down that the manufacturer suggested retail price was like $1,700 for this living room set, but the sale price was $1,299. In 365 days, that living room set was $1,299, no matter if there was a sale or not. But they would just say, "Hey, we're having a President's Day sale. This is the original manufacturer suggested retail price, $1,799. You could get it today for $1,299."
Right.
And I know that was for a fact because I was the guy that would set up the showroom floor and put these tags on the furniture. Another thing they would do is they would clean out a section of their warehouse, like the showroom warehouse, and they would say, "Oh, it's a grand opening of our clearance section," and there was no sale. They would just say that there was for 1 year there was like at least 10 grand opening sales at this
Wow.
business, and it was just foolish. You know, people fell for it too, which was the sad part. But and you know, our us employees would make jokes of it because like we knew what was going on. You know, we'd have a song like during Christmas, like we would say it's the most wonderful time of the year. You know, we would
Right.
say it's the fifth grand opening time of the year, you know, and sale of the year. And you know, again, it just goes back to relating it with the lawn and landscape business, hardscape business. Don't fool around with that. I wouldn't recommend fooling around with that. You're gonna leave a bad taste in customers' mouth. You know, they're smarter than you think. They're more savvy than you think. And part of running a successful business is building trust and a good relationship with your clients. And just be upfront like any other relationship and price your yards right. And you shouldn't worry about that. If you want
True.
to go and offer a coupon for certain things, you know, that's up to you. You know, that might not make or break you, but um, you know, maybe a loyalty discount. I don't know. It's just a matter of picking the right ones and the wrong ones.
Right. Would you give? Okay, here's a good one too because I hear this a lot. And I used to do it till probably 2 years ago. I used to do a referral bonus where it's kind of like the same thing as a discount. Um, and I would give them a bonus if they got me a customer. And I would just give them like $25 off their bill. But when I first started it, I used to say, well, you give me a customer, I give you a free cut. So it's kind of like giving a discount, but then eventually I had to get back away from that because it was like we were getting a lot of customers, but we noticed that a couple of them would come on and that other person would get that discount, and then they'd be like, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and go back to cutting our grass. So it was like you were making up for that discount that you're giving for your own customer that you had. So I feel like it was like a wish wash sometimes on giving that discount or referral bonus. So we kind of just gave it away. We took it away off our things and just said, just recommend us. We do a good job for you. We've constantly done good work for you. So please, just recommend us for anything that anybody has. And I think that has definitely helped us out in a lot more ways than anything because, it's more about what work you give. And people see your work, I know there's a lot of people on here on Instagram, a lot of people on YouTube and Twitch that are watching us right now. And if you're out there giving great work, customers are going to see that work. They're going to see somebody driving by is going to see that work and be like, well, I see this guy that's there mowing, or I see this guy's out there landscaping. I want his quality to come to my yard, and that's going to be a good recommendation for you. Or they'll go up to that neighbor and say, hey, I see Joe Blow did your grass, and we want to make sure that they go ahead and get our yard on their list. We're right down the road. Doing that quality and making sure your numbers are correct, you're always going to continue to get customers. And I think that's one of the main things that, it helps out. You don't have to give discounts. I feel in the last couple of years, there's no point in discounts really, especially for us, for service industry.
I think too, like if you look at it, for the longest time, car dealerships are the biggest culprits when it comes to discounts and sales and prices and stuff like that. And then somewhere along the line, a few of them started doing the opposite. And I think some still do, but they now there's been a couple dealerships that have haggle-free pricing. The price that you see on the window, the window sticker is the price you pay. Like no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I don't know how well that's worked out for car dealerships, but I mean, I think it would be safe to say that some customers appreciate that because some customers don't want to haggle. They don't want to negotiate. That's stressful enough. Like they need something, like, all right, here's the price. Okay, cool. I'm ready to pay for it,
Right.
And again, I think we all have that impression that dealerships are shady, because you could go in and buy a new truck and pay a certain price for it. And then I go in and buy the same exact truck and pay a different price for it, and then once I find out that you got it, the exact same truck cheaper than I did, I'm going to be like left like I lost out, I'm going to be upset, I'm not saying that dealerships are not successful. Of course they are, and who am I to question their business practices? But I think if you were to apply stuff like that to this field, choose wisely. I'm not saying not to offer discounts, but choose wisely. I think it's better being upfront. On the contrary, right? It's tough to compete against a business that is offering some discounts, because now that comes back to the high school kid that does the lawn for $20. In essence, it's the same exact argument. Like, hey, why should I pay your price if this company is offering discounts? It's like, well, all right, how well do you know that person? How well do you know that company? They're just coming through doing your lawn real quick and banging it out, or they're doing a quality job. But like you said, it speaks for itself.
Yeah, I really do think there's a lot to it. I'd love to know everybody's opinion on it, because literally I feel like it's one of the biggest debates in lawn care, besides gas or battery too. Which we can go over multiple different ways too. we have in many other episodes. So, I'd love to know everybody that's watching us, or if you're listening to us, let us know what your thoughts are on it, because it's one of those things like you said, you're competing against other companies that are giving the discounts if you're not giving the discounts. So, how do you prepare a customer when you're giving them a quote, to say like, well, how do you say, well, look, here's my, portfolio, here's my, recommended customers that, gonna let you know what kind of work I do. It's one of those things. How do you approach a new customer and against somebody that's saying, I'll give you 10% off, whatever it is, so it's one of those things, one of the things I always do see is, and it's funny, is literally we did a job this year, and we went to go put a quote in on it. And, I told the lady, okay, well, this is what my cost is. And she goes, well, I'll let you know if you want the job. This guy over here is going to do it for this price, and this guy's going to do it for that price. So if you could beat that price or even come in, we'll go ahead and go with you. And I said, no. I said, this is my price. I said, I can't go off of the, other people's price. And she's like, well, why not? And I said, well, tell you the truth. I have a couple guys that I have to come in. I have insurance. I have, all the certificates that I, know that I'm doing this the right way. I said, do they have that? Do they have the insurance? Do they have the employees? Do they have the equipment to do it? And she goes, I never thought about that. I never really did. So you got to educate your customers on what you're doing for them, especially when you're giving them a price. And, even if, you get a call and say, well, we're going to go with somebody else, educate them. Tell them what your price is and what you think, because I'll tell you what, sometimes customers will go with you by giving them the education and telling them that, hey, I have this going on, or I'm going to put this patio in this way. And I don't know if this guy's going to do this for you, but I'm going to put this, edging around it to make sure that the patio is not going to come out, or I'm going to put, grade the dirt away from it and make sure that we throw seed down. Does that, because who knows? Some people don't tell them what they're doing. Some people just come in, they just put in the plants. We see a lot of companies that just come in, especially with mulch. They'll just come in and just throw the mulch right over everything, educate them. Do you pull, if you pull weeds, let them know. Say, I pull your weeds. I go ahead and redefine your bed edges for you. I go ahead and spray any little weeds with Roundup. I put preen down. Let your customer know that, because a lot of customers just think when you give them a mulch estimate, they're just like, oh, well, you're just giving it, you're just going to go ahead and throw mulch on, right? You only need like 5 bags, right? Tell them how much you're going to put down, let them know. Some customers don't know that. So educate your customers. I think that's one of the main things too, when you're giving prices too, especially when somebody else might give them a discount, tell them why too, so.
Have you ever seen like, you've been in the business for many years, decades.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, almost 3 decades, guys.
I'm not trying to age you, but like, right. What are some of the things that you've seen as far as like the attempt of a business to try to offer discounts and like maybe failed,
I've seen some that offer some good discounts. I had seen one that they used to like would come up to you, they would see a company out there cutting. They would wait till that company left and go up to the house and knock on the door and say, we can do it for half of what they did. Well, that company's not in business no more. They didn't last long because they got so many customers for doing it for less, but they couldn't keep up with it. They couldn't give the same quality as other companies. And so that affected them in the long run to where they ended up with too many customers and couldn't give the quality as what I was giving them. So they ended up losing out and then turned around and closed shop. Another one I seen was giving a good discount for landscaping. They tried to push for landscaping. And their discount was, sign up with us. We'll give you 25% off right off the top. And that kind of bit them in the butt because a lot of their stuff, especially when it comes to plants, plants cost money. So does, irrigation, all that stuff costs money. They ended up losing on it because they were trying to buy a lot of the plants at the big box stores. And a lot of us know that big box stores are awesome. They're out there to help customers out and stuff. But a lot of times, as a business, we get a discount from a wholesaler. So we're getting that little bit of a discount, a lower price than what you're buying at a big box store. So they got to a bigger job, and it was a lot of plants that they had to put in, and they lost their money on it. So they ended up closing shop literally within 6 months. And it's one of those ones that you hate to see happen when, if you go through the right steps, you can definitely make your business, go in. But I've seen all kinds of different discounts, $1,000 off if you sign up for a $15,000 landscape job, there's all kinds of different ones out there. 10% is a one that I see a lot. People try to give 10%. Like I said, the one fertilization company I worked for always still gives away their first application lower, and that's one that stayed in there for many years, but it's still one of those ones that you're fighting it on your next application, and that can hurt you guys if you do that. And it's just one of those things. I mean, everybody gives discounts sometimes. Like you said, and I said at the beginning, I think when you're first starting out, if you're first starting out and you're trying to get that job, you can offer those discounts, but you got to realize that at some point you got to be like, well, I can't give discounts. One of the things is, a lot of people give discounts for seniors, and that's fine. You can do that, but you got to realize, when do you go and say, well, how do I know how old you are? Do you stop and, some of these people could be like, well, I'm a senior, well, how do I know? You don't know, what I'm saying? So you got to realize and know exactly when you're going to give that discount. So, but there's so many different discounts out there, and it's one of those things that you got to be careful on it. You got to be careful of what you do. So,
yeah, I want to make something clear for the viewers that are out there, especially the ones that are starting off. And I no longer run a business. I dabbled in it a little bit. What do I know, right? But one thing I did learn is that the customer is not always right. And I hate that saying that the customer is always right, because that's a sense of entitlement for a customer.
right.
If you go by that approach, then you're always going to be serving and you're never going to be taking care of yourself. You have to consider it like an equal partnership, and you have to benefit from it. They have to benefit from it, but they're not always right. Now, if you screw up and you do something wrong, you have to own up to that, but they have a responsibility as well too. Um, but saying that is like, again, new businesses feel like they have to please the customer so much that they have to go out of their way so much. I have to spend more time at this property. I gotta go above and beyond. And yeah, that's ideally in the back of your mind what you want. But now, I know I'm kind of going off the path of discounts and coupons and stuff like that. But I mean, if you are so diligent that way, there's a right way and wrong way of doing that. If you're so diligent that way, then they're gonna have that expectation of you the entire time. If you're not charging for picking up toys and debris, from your properties, and because you want to be a nice person, and take care of that person, you're gonna always be behind the 8 ball. And so I kind of wanted to emphasize that, you could still do a good job. You could still do a quality job. Just know what the boundaries are. And another point when it comes to going back to the discounts is, I want all the viewers that are listening to us, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on any platform that we have
Anywhere
right now,
you're listening, you're watching.
if you still have either satellite TV or cable TV, raise your hand if you're happy with the price that they offer you. Because, like, when you go, what do you guys have for a cable provider in Wisconsin?
We have pretty much, there's a couple different companies that do internet through us. and they do cable and all that. So
yeah, so
I
like
think
you have your Cox, you have your Spectrum, you have your Charter, you have your Verizon 5s. Go on any of those websites and find out how much cable costs. There's no price.
no.
They don't list prices. Like they don't list standard
Well,
prices. They list
some of
introductory.
them have like a discounted price, and it says for so many months. If
Right.
you actually look at it, it's never an actual total price on anything.
It's a mystery.
And then it's always like, okay, it's a lot of times I'll see a lot of that where it's $29.99 plus fees. They don't tell you what those fees are. Like you got to get a modem from us. You got to get this from us. If you want Wi-Fi, it's an extra cost. They don't let you know that up front.
Raise your hand if you're happy with your pricing service, because maybe you're on a promotion, maybe you are happy. But what is their price? Like what is their standard rate price without discounts of what that service is? And you go on Spectrum, like we have Spectrum. You go on
Right.
Spectrum, you're not going to find what it costs without discounts. What it is. It's always a bundle package for introductory rate for a year for $29.99, includes a landline, cable, a mobile phone, house internet, high speed internet. Like they're all promotions, right? And we could all relate to the fact that we hate calling our cable service provider with customer service problems. We hate like when they raise the prices and all this stuff, and your friend pays a lower rate, you pay a higher rate. That is so frustrating. That is so frustrating. Do not cause that to your customers as a lawn and landscape business.
So okay, we know they do that kind of a discount. Okay. So would it be easier to do that kind of a thing too?
No, it would be better just to have for me, my opinion,
Right.
Jason's opinion, would be better to not even offer discounts or anything like that. Just this is my price. That's it. Like you were just
Right.
talking about. This is my price. And then if you need to raise your price, this is my new price. And everybody pays the same price, based off of what obviously given factors of property size, lawn size,
Yeah.
different jobs. But yeah, that's your rate. If you're $60 an hour for one property, don't be $40 an hour for the other property.
Right.
It'd be even. And that avoids that whole frustration.
Yeah.
You got to be clear. I think
yeah.
so. That's just me.
I think Brightstone's on right now. We ain't seen Brightstone in a while. Brightstone, welcome back to the podcast. We're glad you came back for, I don't know where you disappeared. You're probably out too busy right now, but I know Brightstone. He probably gives offers and discounts like that. I know him. Like he's always giving those dad jokes. Like this one he just gave us today. Why do crabs never volunteer?
I get so mad when I can't figure out the answer of these.
Because they're shellfish. Okay, Brightstone.
All right, I'll give him that one.
He said, "What do you call a sheep who can sing and dance?"
What?
Lady Baba. I tell you what, Brightstone. I know you're giving discounts. Thank you. But yeah, if you guys give discounts, I'd like to know what kind of discounts you're giving and how it works out for you. Because, another one that's always interesting, like you said with cable, is Sirius XM radio that you get in your car. Dude, I tell you what, every 12 months I got to call them and say I'm canceling, but they give me a better rate than what I had before. Like, how do they work that? Like, how does that work in their favor? Do they wait for that one guy that just never really checks his price and then they just get him left and right on it, or what? Because it's one of those things that you're always kind of like, what? How are you giving me a better price than I had 12 months ago? Like literally, I just had to take a car off, and they were like, "Oh, well, you were paying $299 per month for each car. Well, we'll give you an extra, 12 months for free." And I'm like, I don't have the car anymore. How am I going to pay? Like, I can't listen to the radio. Why would I want it for free?
It's crazy.
It always doesn't make sense.
You know, it's funny. A friend of mine, this is a true story. A friend of mine, he would do that with the cable company. You know, like I'm gonna cancel. You know,
Right.
and like, oh, sir, well, you know, let me see if I could give you. They pretty much told him to go freaking kick rocks. Like they're like, all right, yeah, all right, we'll cancel you. And he's
Yeah.
like, what? You know, like he didn't expect that answer. Now it's like he's like he had like he went back on his word. Like he ended up paying what they were asking him to pay because he didn't want to give up his cable. But like he thought he had them by saying, yeah, I'm gonna cancel. Yeah, blah, blah. And they were like, fine, cancel. Yeah.
Jeez. Well, Brightstone says he offers discounts. Okay, so that is one person that's answered already for discounts. He gives discounts for military and first responders. Otherwise, no discounts.
How do you confirm that?
That's what I'd like to know. Brightstone, how do you confirm that they're in the military or first responder or like past military? How do you differentiate that and we'll know how to do that? Because
I mean,
you know, it's always a good thing to give that discount. And I think that, you know, some people do give that discount. First responders, I guess, if you've seen them in like at a fire station or something, or, you know, in a police car, I can see that. But how do you know that they actually work there or still work there? That's a good question for Brightstone.
yeah, I think the first responder is a little more difficult to identify because, like, you could say, "Hey, I'm a nurse," or you know, I'm an EMT. I'm a, you know, I'm a. I don't know, they could go different routes, and sometimes, like, I mean, I'm gonna trust a person, especially you know for the military, because that's kind of crappy if you're saying that you're military and you're not. You know,
Right.
that's to me, that's just you know, that's kind of shitty to make pretend that you're military,
Right.
but. I mean, I guess there's some assumptions too, right? Like, you know, you see like a Marine Corps flag on the property somewhere, or you know, stickers on their car. You know, uh, that's a little easier. But you know, law enforcement, first responders, you know,
It's very interesting.
you want to give them the benefit of the doubt for sure. But
Right.
you know,
Mike from This Old Relic says military keep their kids after they retire. So do you keep their discounts afterwards? I'm confused on Mike. First responders should have a work ID. That's correct. That's correct. You should have a work ID. Even military has an ID. Even if you're retired, I know my father-in-law has a ID that says you know he was in the military. So I mean, and he gets that discount at Lowe's, at Home Depot. I think a lot of those places give discounts. So I mean, if you're doing that type of a discount, and you know maybe that's where you say, well, you know, if you're military or you know if you're first responder or even if you're a senior citizen, I'd like to see a card. You know, because like here in Ohio we have Golden Buckeye. So once you get to a certain age, you can get a Golden Buckeye card where you get discounts, free coffee at McDonald's, and all that stuff, but you got to show them that card. So, I mean, that could be something that you could offer, you know, customers if you really wanted to and say, well, I need to make sure I see a copy of it, you know, with your name on it. So I know that you're, you know, that person. So
I think if there's a customer that you know that he's wearing a Vietnam vet baseball cap, I'm not even going to ask for an ID on that guy.
well, yeah. No.
Yeah.
What I mean, even if he's wearing World War II, I think I'm gonna be all right with that.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got to be up in his 90s at that point, you know, and I'll definitely cut his grass for free, probably, you know, because I mean, he's 90, you know. So, but yeah, I think that's one of the things I guess you know you can look at too.
Now,
So,
how much is that discount? Did he say a percentage?
No, he did not. Brightstone, what kind of discount would you give? That's what I'd like to know too.
Like, are you doing first cut free for vets, or are you doing 10% discount, or you know, free, you know, treatment of this, you know, with, you know,
you know a good discount you can give your customers? Take their garbage can back up to the garage door for them. There you go. That's a good discount. It's free. I'm walking it up to your garage door for you before I cut. You know, it's the Acme discount. There you go. Brightstone says military. Some are validated through Project Evergreen. Okay, I could, you know, that is a good project. Or I verify some way through the initial process of the hiring for the customer. I get that. That's definitely a good thing. Project Evergreen is a good project out there for us giving back to the green industry, from us, the green industry, giving back to the military. And I think that's a good thing you're doing there, buddy. So definitely, look into it if you want to give back to some of the military people. I did that once for a year, and we gave back pretty much, and gave pretty much, they wanted to pay me. He wanted to pay me. He was out away for leave. He did come back and pay me for some work, but I pretty much discounted him, way, way more than I should have anyways, because he did, go and serve, and was over for, I think he was over there for 6 months. So, I mean, that's definitely something that you should look into. So if you're interested in doing that. So, but yeah, that's a good thing. He have done some free service through Project. Otherwise, he gives a 10% discount for military or first responders. So that's always something you could do. Okay, Brightstone, here's a good question to you. Do you jack the price up 10%? There you go.
No, see, I think that's an easy. That's an example of a.
No, I know. I know he doesn't, but I'm just joking with him because
military and first responder. That's an easier. That's a good discount practice if you want to offer one, because they
do a lot for us. They're providing a service for us.
No,
so, I mean, 100%. I can see that. Yeah,
100%. But I mean, it's not like most people are going to complain, oh, how come you gave that guy 10% discount? Right. Well, sir, because he's a military guy. Oh, and someone who's not, yeah. No one's going to be like, not a lot of people are going to be like, well, I should get a 10% discount too. Well, sir, are you in the military? Right. No.
Right.
That's easier to make available to. But if you're trying to say for 20% off for new customers, and then their next door neighbors, and one pays less than the other, that's harder to try to convince the other person. Whereas if they're neighbors and one's a military and one's isn't, that's a lot easier to say he pays less because he's a first responder.
Right.
I don't know if that made sense, but
it did. It really did. Brightstone, I got another question for you. So, if they're military and they give cash, will you give a discount? That's a good one to ask. Would you give another discount on top of that?
I don't think
a lot of people give extra discounts for cash. I've heard of companies that will take away the tax, will knock 10% off just because it's cash. It's interesting to know with Brightstone if you do that, if somebody gives you cash or anybody else out there, because it's one of those things that I think that's where, like us, we don't do that, and never did because of just so much. But I've heard a lot of companies that do, because if they offer cash.
One of the mechanics I go to does that because I think they only do it to offset their card fees, their bank fees. So they'll offer a little bit a discount if you give them cash versus a card. And there's some gas stations too that do that. 10 cents. Your credit card price for fuel is 10 cents more per gallon than if you were to pay cash.
Yeah. He goes, so double the discount, 10% plus cash discount. Yeah, that's what I want to know, Brightstone. Are you going to do that? Are you going to give him double?
I'm going to say he doesn't do that.
He doesn't do that. I know he doesn't. I'm assuming he doesn't, but it like you said, there is a lot of gas stations that are now doing that, where if you pay cash, it's 10 cents off.
Here's one. Do you guys offer a friends and family discount?
Ooh. No, because anybody can say they're my friend. I don't like that one. And I don't like doing work for family.
So no, I don't like that either. No, because they expect family and friends expect.
They want it for free.
More from you for less.
Yeah. So no. Brightstone does it all for free for his family. He has to go out and cut it all for free. So, I mean, that's. I'm going to get you in trouble, Brightstone. He says, yes, he doesn't do that. He just gives one discount, the 10% off if they're military. And and they pay cash.
Yeah,
I agree with him on that. I agree kind of that you should just kind of stick with the one thing. It kind of gets confusing sometimes if you're trying to give more discounts and be like, well, if you pay cash, it's 10% off. If you're military, it's 10%. If you're in the military and you're an EMT, I'll give you 10 more percent. And then if you give me another customer, I'll give you 10%. You could be adding up, discounts left and right, and that would be hard to,
Here's a fun to end it. We have like less than 10 minutes left, but like
Yes.
here's a question, and it's going to turn dark very quickly. Have you ever accepted other forms of payment other than money?
No. I'm going to say no. Because, I'm married and I'm happily married because I don't want to have that any go out, but that would be very interesting. I'll tell you that much.
No, I mean like, hey, I'll do this job for you if you do this job for me. Like, let's say you're
okay, trading.
Yeah, like let's say you're doing landscaping for a mechanic, and you do his landscape, and then in turn he fixes your car, your kid's car, or something like that.
Okay, well, I'll tell you a little story about that. So there's a company out there that's all throughout the United States that it's like a BNI group where you trade services. And that's where I used to be a part of it. And the problem with that was it was hard because if somebody, like if you wanted to go to the mechanic, he's only giving you an oil change, $50 oil change, right? But then he wants mulch. So where does it equal out? It doesn't work out. You see what I'm saying? Because if you're mulching his yard for $300, he's doing your oil change for $50. It doesn't work out. You know what I'm saying? So I think a lot of those trade companies, you got to have. I've noticed when I was in it for a year, and I did meet a lot of good people, and we kind of actually changed out to where we were, paying each other cash, which was a lot better than trying to do trade, because then you're like, oh, well, you can do this for me and I can do that for you. And it just didn't work out. And, but I know nowadays they trade away. So if you say your value's at 400, that oil change guy or the mechanic has to do $400 worth of oil changes or like a tires or something else out of it. But then they also changed it to where if you have materials in it, you have to pay cash now. So if you're wanting tires, they can only trade out the labor instead of the tires. So you're still paying for the tires and still the mechanic makes out money. You would have, if you had mulch, you would have your mulch price in there. So your mulch is separate, but then your hourly rate would be gone. So they do that anymore. So that's a little bit different than when I first started it. It was one of the first things that when I first started, it was the first couple years that they had started that trade thing, and it doesn't work out real good. I'll tell you that much. So, but yeah, does anybody give a discount or trade out services? That would be definitely, I'd like to know if you do or not. I think it's more about getting the recommendation, as in my eyes, is to be able to be recommended, from that guy. I'll tell you what, I'll definitely give service to, a mechanic. And if he wants to give, change out my oil, that's fine. I'll give him the cash for it or whatever, but I like to, work close to each other and network with different businesses. And I think that's one of the things that can help each other out if you're working with, a realtor, or if you're working with a mechanic or anybody like that, because you're going to get services back in exchange. You're going to keep business coming back and forth. And then you're always going to be able to get recommendations from all them people you're working with. So I think networking with as many businesses as you can is definitely beneficial too. So
yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Good episode, man. Good episode.
Yeah, definitely good episode, guys. Thank you all for watching. Like I said, I'm proud of us. I think we've had a good episode here. We went deep into it, got right to the topic, and I think we got straight to the point of it. And thank you for Brightstone for commenting in, and Mike for commenting in. Everybody that's been watching us and listening to us, thank you guys. Come back. We'll be back next week. Who knows what day we're going to be on. Hopefully we'll be back on our Sundays. We've been on some different days and we've been gone for a while. But we got some great more topics. Who knows what we're going to talk about, but we got some great debate topics to go on to. And I think it's going to be really, really interesting on what we get into this year. So I've been watching a lot of you guys' stuff and on Instagram and YouTube and kind of picking some stuff out that I think a lot of you guys are asking for. So it's going to be very interesting stuff this year, guys. So
Sure.
Thank you guys for being on. Thank you to our sponsors. We have Cujo that's sponsoring us. We have, I'm drawing a blank here.
That's
Pro
all right.
Parts Direct and Awesome Candle Company. So thank you guys for being our sponsors. If you guys need any of that stuff, definitely contact us and we can hook you guys up. So
just a quick note on Awesome Candle Company on Etsy. It's spelled AUSOME. It's not out yet, but we're working on the landscape line of scented candles. Stay tuned for that.
you know which one would be really cool? Red mulch.
Red mulch. Yeah.
That's the next new one. Blood red mulch. That's what we have. There we go. That'd be a nice one. Hey, who knows? But thank you guys for watching us. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you soon. Go listen to any of our old past podcasts. Comment everything that you can. Like it. We love that you guys are liking and sharing and listening to our stuff. So thank you. Let's keep moving up in that world over in Netherlands and Australia and New Zealand. Everywhere we're at, man, I'd love to be way higher. So thank you guys for watching us.